And hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and this is Movie Pit Podcast. And this is the April Roundup. Yes, I know it's late again. I'm sorry. It's just too much stuff in the way. Life gets in the way a lot, and unfortunately, the podcast suffers for it. So let's just dive right into it. We're going to start off with Monkey Man. Dave Patel officially has made his directorial debut, and he could have made a drama. That's really where we kind of, experienced Dave Patel the most in dramas. But no, he decided to go the action martial arts route, and that led him to breaking his hand early in production. But instead of halting filming, which, anybody else probably would have done at that time, he really decided to just change the way he did the fight scenes. And we still got some pretty damn decent fight scenes, even with Dave Patel breaking his hand and not being able to do really what he envisioned, at least from what he has said in the press tours and stuff like that. All that on top of the fact that Monkey Man was originally going to go and be a Netflix movie until Jordan Peele, of all people, saw the movie and through his monkey paw banner, bought it, took it to Universal Pictures, and obviously the rest is history. Patel did say that he wanted the story to matter as much as the fight scenes, so the fight scenes were impactful as much as the story, and that really works here for the most part, in my eyes, for the most part. The big final fight scene, you can feel it, especially since it connects to the flashbacks we see throughout the movie. I really did like the fight scenes. I love a good fight scene as much as anybody. I am the fight scene guy, and Monkey Man has some pretty great fight scenes at that. So credit is due, especially considering that Patel has mentioned that this was a troubled production in the sense that they didn't really have a lot of the equipment that they wanted. They were filming kind of in an isolated location most of the time. So the fact that they were able to pull this off the way they pulled it off, and the final product is amazing unto itself. The only criticism I would have about Monkey Man is the pacing. Before the final act is kind of slow. I get why it slows down. There's a reason why it does slow down. Kind of gives you the broader strokes on what Patel's kid, as his character is titled, is fighting for, and why they're fighting for it, and everything else, and throwing a few montages in there. But it does slow down the movie, and you can feel it, and it's not, the biggest criticism in the world, but out of everything that you can criticize this movie for, I think it's that in particular, that right before the final act, it just slows down tremendously. But like I mentioned, the reason it slows down is to give you, the broader sense of what this character is fighting for and everything like that. We get a spotlight of India's transgender community, which I don't think we'd ever really get in a movie, especially an action movie like this, or a big movie, period. So that was really cool. It just, again, adds extra layers of what is really going on over there. Even if it's just the ever slight hint of it, we don't get in any other movies. This movie did it. Overall, I thought Monkey Man was a solid directorial debut for Patel, and I am wholeheartedly interested in seeing what Patel does next, whatever he does next, whether it's a drama, whether it's another action movie, whether he, goes into the horror route. I think that would be really cool. And speaking of horror, the next movie we're going to talk about is The First Omen. So, of course, with The First Omen, the question on film and Twitter became whether you liked The First Omen or whether you liked Immaculate more. We talked about Immaculate last month. Both movies went about doing what they wanted to do their own way, right? Immaculate took the slow burn thriller approach before the big third act reveal. The First Omen was much more horror throughout. You got jump scares, creepy score, terrifying images, and a buck wild third act with multiple reveals. Personally, I lean more toward The First Omen, and while there were some pacing issues with The First Omen, the thing that keeps it moving and going and holds it all together is its star in Nell Tiger-Free. She is so damn good in this. Seeing her as this kind of like innocent nun that comes to Italy to start her sisterhood, to slowly descend into madness and hell, for the lack of a better word. She does it so well. And there's a scene near the end where it comes off a bit it can come off a bit silly, and it probably does come off a bit silly, but Free is so good at it that that silliness washes away the longer it keeps going, and it becomes unnerving to watch because you're like, what's happening to her? But there are two big but there are two big highlight scenes for me that I want to talk about. One involves the much talked about scene, the scene as everyone refers it to, that could have resulted the movie into getting an NC-17 rating, but it didn't. And it plays out, and I was like, okay, you went there. What else could you possibly do? But there's a scene for me, besides the scene, and the scene was really cool. And the director, I forgot to put down her name, but she's talked a lot about that scene already. But the scene that genuinely freaked me out happens before the final act. It involves Free's character in a room by herself, and a corner of the room that is pitch black with a very minimal light on one end. And you just know that something is coming. But the way it happens, because they linger on it and they keep cutting back and forth between the corner and Free's character, it is so damn creepy. I admittedly wussed out. I had to look away from the screen. I'm not even, for a good few seconds of the movie, I looked away because it was so damn creepy. That I have not done that in a I have not done that since I was a kid. It genuinely freaked me out. So kudos to I think the First Omen, of all the horror movies that have come out so far this year that I have watched, obviously the big, the big theater ones, there's a few, ones that have come out on streaming or VOD that I haven't gotten a chance to watch it. But of the big ones that have come out this year, the first big one for me is the First Omen. The best one for me. My favorite one is the First Omen for me. Now, this is a prequel to The Omen, the classic, of course, 1976 movie. So things do kind of line up at some point, and that's kind of when the movie kind of loses. I wouldn't say loses, probably loses is not the best word. But that's when the movie starts being like, okay, you're tying it into this. It could have been its own thing. You could have done your own thing, but you're tying it into the original. Okay, that's fine. But for me, what they do with this one, it does make me question what they do with the ending. Because I don't obviously want to give away the ending, because I do highly recommend you guys check this out. But if you know that first original movie and then you watch this, it opens up a lot of questions in terms of continuity and in terms of the lore, I guess, if you want to say, of these movies, because obviously there's more than one Omen movie. So I don't know. I think that for me, that was the only thing that kind of got to me. Either way, I very much like the First Omen, like I mentioned. I think it's my favorite horror movie of the year so far, for sure. All right, the next movie we're going to talk about is Civil War. Alex Garland's newest film has been very divisive, if you want to call it that. You either liked the movie or you didn't, which, yes, I know, that's how movie reactions work. I know, but bear with me. You either like the fact the movie doesn't give you all the information, or at least some information, or you don't like the fact that you're just thrown into this world and have to figure it out, go with the flow of what's going on, of what we're seeing. You liked to have a conversation of how this happened, why did it happen, how long has it been happening, who are the real good guys, who are the real bad guys, why is the country divided like this, what happens to the dollar, because there's a point in the movie where the Canadian money gets mentioned, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that will open doors for you apparently. And even though you have all those questions, and having all those questions, usually in a movie, especially a big movie like this, Civil War was arguably one of the most anticipated movies at that point coming out, and you probably have, of course, a dozen more questions that usually takes away from a movie. But here, that doesn't really take away what Garland does to make this movie so enthralling and tense. At least for me. From the minute the movie starts, it grabs you and only loosens its grip ever so slightly for you to take a breather, and then it immediately tightens its grip on you until the credits roll again, and then it will stick with you as you take the ride home. This one is definitely one of those movies where you go watching, especially if you're watching with your buddies or your movie watching partner. You're going to talk about this movie, and you did. Obviously this movie came out a while ago, and I'm barely talking about it now. But it was definitely one of those movies. This isn't an action movie like the trailers make it seem. There is some slight action about half hour into the movie, and then the action really doesn't come back until the final act, which turns into kind of the takeover of the Capitol, which we do see in the trailers. This movie is about the journalists and war photographers at that as well. And Kirsten Dunst has a line in the movie at some point. I don't know if this is verbatim or if just the gist of it is, we record so other people ask. And that resulted because Kaylee Spaney's character, Jesse, sees something horrific, and Lee comes in and says this. Of course, she has the other line about how she thought she was sending a message back, back home about not doing this. Every time she goes to, these war-torn countries, and we see, a montage of what Lee has done and where she's been and what she's seen. And it's just, it's crazy that a movie will make you ask those questions. And even though you've heard the questions before in real life, it took this movie for some people to be like, okay, yeah, why are we asking those questions? Why aren't we asking those questions? Why aren't we taking, the signs of that? And speaking of great lines, obviously Jesse Plemons' line, what kind of American are you? Which got, a little memed online after the fact. But that whole scene is arguably the best scene in the entire movie. And it's almost the most important scene in the entire movie because it is so tense and you truly don't know what's going to happen. This movie, people say a lot about how characters have plot armor and nothing bad's going to happen to them. That scene, any one of them could have died. And that is what makes that scene so perfect. And it's made even better after the fact, knowing that Plemons wasn't the original actor for that role. He came in after the actor who was originally going to play that character dropped out, and he happened to be on set with his wife, his real wife, Kirsten Dunst, and they got this pretty great scene, the scene that everyone pretty much talks about when they talk about Civil War. So I don't really know what more I can say that hasn't already been said about this movie. I know everyone was talking about Kirsten Dunst and how great she is, and Kaylee Spaney, who is continuing to show that she is one of the best new actresses around and is the future of Hollywood, really. Wagner Moura, who plays Joel in the movie, he's great, and I like that people were giving him his credit. And of course, character actor Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays Sammy, also very good in this movie as well, in the amount of time that he has. So there's a lot to like about Civil War if you haven't seen it at this point yet. If you don't like the plot, then the imagery alone should probably make you love this movie, because this movie is fantastically shot, and there's a lot of great shots in this movie. The cast is great. The potential message and theme of the movie is powerful and should make you question things. There is a lot of questions that don't get answered in this movie, and for some people that's a good thing, because it just makes you have that conversation and makes you think. It makes you hypothesize in a lot of ways. And I know a lot of people were bashing on Alex Garland for not having or not giving the answers during press tours and interviews and stuff like that. But at the same time, we wouldn't be having, we wouldn't have had those conversations, obviously. Again, this movie came out a while ago. We wouldn't be having those conversations if we had all the answers. Yeah, we probably should get some answers. But the fact that this movie was so talked about, whether it was good or bad, it did its job. It made you talk about it. So, that's really all I've got to say about Civil War. The next movie, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, is, of course, based on true events during World War II. Winston Churchill, played by a very heavy makeup Rory Kenner in this movie, had a secret team of soldiers that were tasked with secret missions to take down Nazis. This movie is the first mission of said team. Guy Ritchie, the director of this movie, took it upon himself, of course, to add his own style and to direct the movie. It's pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's pretty enjoyable. It's got a great cast. Henry Cavill, of course, playing the leader of the unit. Alan Richardson in there as well, a.k.a. Reacher from the Jack Reacher series, was really good. Isa Gonzalez, who plays a singer and spy. Marjorie Stewart was, again, all these people are real people that they played in the movie. And then, of course, the rest of the cast, Henry Golding, Alex Pettyfer, Hero Fiennes Teffen, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Carrie Elwes is in there as well. Babs, I don't want to butcher his last name. But he was in Dune. He plays the guy at the end with Paul. I just don't want to. I really don't want to butcher his last name because I'm not even going to try. But he's in there, and he's very effective too. I think he's one of the kind of the scene stealers when he's in it. But this movie's great. Isa Gonzalez has a great scene near the end where she's singing, and in Richie fashion, of course, while that's going on, he intercuts it with the boys on the mission doing what, taking people out with silencers and choking them out and everything else like that. The movie's fine. You can clearly tell that they're having fun, and they had fun while making it. Obviously, it's history, so kind of getting into that spoiler territory isn't really a thing here. They do somewhat succeed in what they managed to accomplish in terms of the overall goal. But it's a pretty fun film. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite recent Guy Ritchie movie, but it is definitely up there for that. So I don't want to get too into it. I don't really have that much to say about it other than it was a pretty fun movie. Moving on to Abigail. The Radio Silence boys are back, and with Melissa Barrera at that, with this new horror movie about a group of people who kidnap a little girl, but soon find out that this little girl is actually a vampire, and a ballerina vampire at that. So this and the trailer to M. Night Shyamalan's Trap have almost restarted the conversation of trailers showing too much. But I'll stick with Abigail. There is something that they could have used to sell the movie that isn't the vampire twist. So before I get to spoilers, I will say this about the movie. It's a ton of fun. It's bloody. It's gory. It's a good mix of a horror comedy that's very Ready or Not. Obviously, it's the same guys who, did it. But the very impressive cast and what else this movie does is pretty darn good. So yes, I would highly recommend Abigail to anyone on the fence. Here's where I'll get to some spoiler territory. I'll put a link, I'll put the times down in the description area so you can avoid the spoiler conversation if you don't want to hear any spoilers. The vampire twist. Could they have worked around it in the trailer? Yeah, the simple answer is yes, they could have avoided it. The story, of course, is this group of criminals kidnap Abigail, who is played magnificently by Alicia Weir, who is not American. She was mostly known for Matilda, the musical on Netflix, where she plays a British character. In reality, I think she's actually Irish or Scottish or something, or one of those two. I'm sorry if I'm, doing that, but I know she's one of the two. So her accent worked very, very good. But they don't know who she is. They know at first they don't know who her father is, and that of course is all planned out by Giancarlo Esposito's character Lambert, and he tells them they need to stay in the house for the day to avoid the cops. It turns out that Abigail is the daughter of a notorious underground gangster who has a guy that comes in and kills anyone that thinks or does cross him or the family in a very vicious, animalistic way. So it becomes, for a little bit, we're stuck in a house with a trained assassin that is picking off these characters one by one. And that is, of course, until they go into Abigail's room and, the shot in the trailer of her, becoming a vampire, showing them that she's not necessarily a vampire. They immediately say she's a vampire. It's a monster, but they're like, oh no, she's a vampire. Like right away, they just, boom, vampire. And then it becomes, of course, they're trapped in the house with a vampire. So yes, they could have kept the vampire twist a secret. But let me ask you this question. Would you have been interested in Abigail as much as you would have been interested in Abigail if they actually kept the vampire twist a secret? If this was a movie that was sold and marketed as we kidnapped this kid and now someone, or maybe even something, because they could have kept the creature feature, concept in there in the trailers, is after us in this house that has locked us in. Maybe she's in on it. They could have kept the line, I'm sorry, what's going to happen to you? So, she kind of knows what's going on. Would you have gone to see it? Also, the twist would have been online opening weekend anyway, so it would have gotten spoiled for anyone who hadn't, gone and watched that opening weekend. I ask only to play devil's advocate. I don't have an answer, because I still would have probably watched it. Many of you probably still would have watched it, because it's radio silence. And a lot of people really liked Ready or Not. A lot of people liked the new Scream movies they did. And of course, this cast, Melissa Barrera, Catherine Newton, Giancarlo Esposito, who only really has a small role in the movie. Dan Stevens, who people recently saw in Godzilla vs. Kong. and of course he has a little bit of a following already. Kevin Durant, who is a great character actor, we saw him, or you probably saw him recently in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, where he plays or does the motion capture and voice for Proximus Caesar. William Catlett, who plays Rickles in the movie, he's done stuff. I don't know if there's anything out there that you can particularly nail him down for. And of course, the late Angus Cloud is also in the movie as well. It's a small cast, but everyone has their moments. Like I mentioned, Weir is very good, bouncing back and forth between this little scared girl and bloodthirsty monster / vampire. Durant will probably steal the show for a lot of people. Kevin Durant is a very good actor. He's a very good character actor too. And I'm hoping that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes gets him back in the limelight. It gets him back in a lot of other movies, because he's great. He's really good, and he can play the big goofball like he does in this movie, or he can play a vicious, I don't want to say vicious, but malicious, menacing villain like he does in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. We'll talk about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in the May roundup. He has done it all. So he's a very capable actor. He can handle the goofy stuff. He can handle the serious stuff. And he was great in this. And of course, Catherine Newton, always reliable in everything that she does. I really liked Abigail. Does it have its issues? Yeah, it does. It has its issues. But it establishes its vampire rules early. The cast is great. It's funny. It's very bloody and gory once it picks up. And they did it practically with touches of CGI, which makes it even better once you find that out. The ending is a little dodgy. I will admit the ending is a little dodgy. I'm done with spoiler talk, but the ending is a little dodgy. Plus, the cameo is kind of out of left field. There's a cameo in this movie that's a little out of left field. I was like, who is it? Because when they do it, they're like, oh, who is it? And then it's like, oh, not who I was expecting. I mean, I wasn't really expecting anybody. Like, I was probably kind of expecting a big name, but like, that's not who I was expecting. It was nice. It was a nice little touch. But I would recommend Abigail. I really would. I know the whole twist conversation and everyone knowing the twist beforehand said that everyone ruins it, but there's a lot of Abigail to love. Even if you know the twist, there's a lot there that you can really dig your heels into. Let's move on to the final movie in May that I watched, or April, sorry. I'm recording this in May, but this is the final movie in the April roundup, Boy Kills World. And this is so far the most unhinged, wacky movie of the year that also happens to be a bloody, violent martial arts action movie. And I really, really like this movie. It's your basic revenge movie. Bill Skarsgård plays Boy, who is voiced by John H. Benjamin, because he's a deaf mute who has been trained since a boy to get revenge on Hilda Vanderkoy, who's played by Famke Jensen in the movie, and her family that runs the totalitarian state that killed his family and left him in the state that he's in. And the reason why he's voiced by John H. Benjamin is because he took the voice of a video game announcer from a video game he played as a kid. So that's his inner voice, because he says he needs an inner voice to, be a badass. Along the way, he meets resistance fighters in Basho, played by Andrew Koji, and Benny, played by Isaiah Mustafa. The rest of the cast, or the rest of the Vanderkoy family, rather, Michelle Dockery, Brett Gelman, and Charlotte Copley, and the family's right-hand assassin, June 27. We don't know why she's named June 27. She's just named June 27, played by Jessica Roth from the Happy Death Day movies. What follows is a bloody, violent, chaotic fight scenes that should please fans like myself, especially if you're, into a good fight scene. Because if anything, the fight scenes will make you happy. And the fight scenes, for me, probably the best thing in the movie. Next to the soundtrack. The soundtrack's actually pretty good, too. And I say the fight scenes will keep you interested and happy because I had to look at this unbiasedly, of course. The crazy, unhinged, out there aspects of the movie could dissuade some fans. And even, at some point, you have to, be in on it. Or not be in on it, but you have to accept that this is not your traditional, very revenge movie where it's very serious. They're having fun with it. And they're having some fun with it. So if you're looking for a serious, straightforward revenge movie, this isn't it. There are moments of that. But for the most part, this thing is having its fun. It has a lot of fun at the beginning. It does get serious toward the end. but it takes a while to get there. But when it gets serious, you're kind of already in it, and you went along for the ride, and you go along with it. At least I did, and at least maybe that's the idea I think the filmmakers had. They bring you in with the wacky goofiness that can be, again, if you're not, into it, or if, it could dissuade you from some stuff. But I think for the most part, I think you will probably be okay with it. And of course, a big part of that is you hear John H. Benjamin's voice over Bill Skarsgård's body, which is just, a sight into itself. And of course, John H. Benjamin, for those who don't know, he was the former voice of Comedy Central for a while. Now people probably know his voice from Archer and Bob's Burgers, the occasional Family Guy appearance. And of course, he's voicing one of the pigeons in the Geico commercials that are going on. So some of the humor is out there a little bit. Just kind of, again, you have to embrace it, and I think you'll be okay. Story's okay. Again, it's a revenge movie. There's a bit of a twist to it, which by the time you get to it, again, it doesn't completely land, but I think you're just so into the movie at that point, you just accept that that's what it is, and you're just going to go along with it. Cast-wise, Skarsgård put everything he had into this role. He does a pretty good job of, playing boy. Again, it's a very physical role. Obviously, he shows off his abs, so ladies, you get that to look at. He doesn't talk at all, obviously. He can't talk. His character can't talk. So a lot of it is very physical. A lot of it is very facial, and he does a very good job at that. Brett Gelman, Michelle Dockery play Gideon, and Melina Vanderkooy. They're pretty much the main villains of the movie, even though Famke Janssen is like the overall, that's the mission. But they're the ones that kind of get the bad guy stuff to do throughout the movie. And there's a reason for that, obviously I won't get into, but there you go. Roth's June 27th. Again, we never find out why she's named June 27th. She gets in on the action, and it's good stuff here. She also put in the work. Of course, she has the helmet on that has lines of dialogue in her visor a lot of the time. And yeah, it's easy. She has the helmet on, and you be like, oh, that's just a stunt person. No, there's pictures of her with the helmet on and off, and she has the body of the stunt doubles. She put in the work too. So she's very good in this. I want to see Jessica Roth in more stuff. Why don't we have Jessica Roth in more stuff? I loved her in Happy Death Day. She's awesome in Happy Death Day. She's the reason why those movies work too. And we just don't see a lot of Jessica Roth. Put Jessica Roth. I'm not even talking about action movies. Just put her in more stuff. For me, the action guy, the action junkie guy, Yanyan Ruhuan, I mispronounced the last name. Most people will remember him as Mad Dog in The Raid. He plays the character named the Shaman who trains the boy. There's a lot more to his character than the movie lets on, but he's in there. Obviously, he's in there. He's going to fight. So just be ready for that one. And like I mentioned, Jansen, she doesn't really have a lot of screen time. And her character is, I don't want to say poorly written, just because, again, she doesn't have that much screen time. So I think if we maybe had a little bit more of her, maybe her character wouldn't feel so paper thin. So that there is that. Koji plays Basho. He's a bit of a crazy character, but he's committed to it and it works. And obviously having Koji from the TV series Warrior, he's a martial artist. He knows how to fight. It's really funny to see him not throw a punch at all in this movie. He just plays like a guy. Because his character, his leg is messed up, so he can't really... So I'm wondering if maybe he was actually injured, or he banged himself up and he couldn't actually do the fight scenes, or he just wanted to do something different and, subvert expectations. No, we all know he can fight, but, he's this guy instead, which I thought was funny. Mustafa, his character, I did not expect them to do what he did with his character, because obviously Boy is a deaf mute, so he can't talk, but he can, still hear, and he reads people's lips. And, he mentions that. Obviously, they can read people's lips. But Mustafa has a beard, so everything doesn't come out right. And if you watch it, I don't want to spoil how they portray that, but it's so ridiculous that I just couldn't help but laugh every time they did it, because it's Mustafa, and obviously Mustafa, made a name for himself as the Old Spice guy. He was the Old Spice guy, now it's a, thing of diamonds. That guy. That's who he is. And of course, he's gone on to, do actual movie roles and stuff like that, like It. He was, of course, in the It franchise. But seeing him here with that, it kind of just it fits. It's kind of funny. Overall, again, I enjoy the action and even some of the music. Soundtrack, like I mentioned, in this movie is actually pretty good. I actually have a few songs from the soundtrack on my playlist because I really enjoyed it. The final fight in this movie, just want to mention, is really, really fucking good. I was trying not to swear, but it's really fucking good. It's more Raid than John Wick. Actually, a lot of the fight scenes here are more Raid-esque than John Wick. I know everybody, fight scene wise, we're just all going to compare it to John Wick and everything, but this is very much more Raid, especially that final fight scene, which I love. I think it's my favorite fight scene so far of the year. There hasn't been a lot, but that's definitely up there. I don't know if I would fully recommend Boy Kills World because it very much is a movie where you kind of have to embrace the silliness at the start to really get through the movie. But if you can get past it and just enjoy for everything else, I think you'll like it. So that's it, everybody. That is finally the April Roundup. I know I've been falling behind on the Roundups and stuff and releasing them very late. I apologize for that. I did hold off on this one on purpose because, obviously, as you can tell, I have not watched Challengers, and I still have not watched Challengers. And I know you're all yelling at me. Calm down. Stop yelling at me. I will watch it. I promise I will watch it. And when I do, I will report back on how I feel about it. But I was holding out until I saw Challengers. I just couldn't fit it in to my schedule at the point originally when I was going to release this. And, now that I've been recording this after the fact, I still haven't gone watch it because there's a bunch of other stuff coming out that I just want to go watch. So I will watch it and get back to you on that. Hopefully you enjoyed it. But that has been April. What was your favorite movie in April? Do you agree with me on any of these movies? Is there a movie that I convinced you to go watch? Let me know. But yeah, May is already here. This is obviously, it's almost the end of May, and I'm releasing this probably at very late in the end of May. But the May Roundup will come out. I already did some movies in May, so it won't be as long as April. And I also have some other stuff coming up in the pipeline. Work is going to be no longer a factor in the future. June uploads should be more regular, so I'll be back to my somewhat regular schedule that I was on before when I was really, going at it with the podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. Again, apologies for the lateness. I will try not to make May's Roundup late. No promises, obviously, because I said that for this one, and it obviously didn't work. But make sure to check out all the links down below in the description/show notes area. Wherever you listen to this podcast, give it a like, give it a subscribe, give it a thumbs up, whatever it is, on whatever platform or whatever podcatcher you're listening to. Very much appreciate it. I will see you guys next time. And as always, go watch some movies.